found any. The people smash the smash.
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, when more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another two grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, "I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source." Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Well, I'm sure the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Keir Starmer's on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work. You just can't say it.
It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, it's the middle of August, but the news never stops. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Lots to discuss this morning between now and 12:30. Big moves on Ukraine. Trump says that there could be some sort of deal on Friday, but Zelensky says he's not moving and certainly not giving up territory. Also here in the UK, big protests right across the country today. Some in support of Palestine Action, which is now a prescribed terrorist group, and some, of course, against those migrant hotels. We'll get into all of that. We'll also talk to 2 MPs in the first half an hour. Robert Jenrick is going to be live here in the studio, the Shadow Justice Secretary. He has a lot to talk about on all those things I just mentioned, but also the fact that fare dodging has gone down quite substantially since his viral video. 15 million plus people saw it when he took on the fare dodgers. Guess what? Maybe sorting out some of the problems in the UK is just about the will to do so. It's not about more laws. It's not about more police officers. It's not about Parliament being recalled on a Saturday. It's just about implementing the laws that are actually there at the minute in terms of things like fare dodging, which just annoys so many people. Could that actually be translated to things like migration, implementing the law that's there already? We'll talk as well to Andy Lound, the space expert, about the sad death of Jim Lovell. He was the commander of Apollo 13. Remember the film? He has died at the age of 94. Lots to discuss as well in regard to our debate desk. Max Harrison is here as well. Rupert Lowe, the MP, mistaking charity rowers for illegal migrants. We'll talk about that. And a new story about, which is just emerging today, about illegal delivery drivers. They've been shut down as well, thanks to the government taking some actual action on them after being shamed into it. Loads to discuss today, including in the Middle East as well, because Israel could cut UK security ties if Keir Starmer recognises the state of Palestine. Is that something you welcome? Lots of things to discuss. get your call in, get your voice note in. Lots to get on the air about. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note, less than a minute please, otherwise Tech Up Dave does get grumpy. 0344 499 1000. You can send me a WhatsApp text message on that number as well, or give me a ring on that number, 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss between now and 12:30. Let's do it together here on Talk. Well, let's get straight into it with Graham Stringer. He is the Labour MP for Blackley and Middleton South for Labour. Lots to discuss this morning. Graham, you're very welcome to the programme. Good morning.
Good morning.
I wonder if we could perhaps start with the issue of the Middle East. I just want to play a clip about what Netanyahu is saying on Gaza. He's talking about a new government from Gaza because the Labour Party is certainly moving in one direction on that. Keir Starmer's talked about recognising a Palestinian state. Let's just hear from Netanyahu now, and then I'll ask Graham what his thoughts are on that.
We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas there, enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to pass it to civilian governance. That is not Hamas and not anyone advocating the destruction of Israel. That's what we want to do.
So there is a lot of international annoyance with Netanyahu. Many people, including the head of his own army, actually internally saying that his plan is not one that is being welcomed. What do you think, Graham?
The suspicion since the start of this conflict is it's been in Netanyahu's personal interest to keep the conflict going because he's subject to legal action within Israel, which may, depending which way it goes, end his career. So I think you have to be careful listening to Netanyahu about what his motives really are. Having said that, I've been a long-term supporter of a two-state solution for Israel and Palestine. Quite frankly, I no longer find that position sustainable. I think that while Israel has not always behaved proportionately, the solution to this, and it's often forgotten in the mayhem and slaughter that's happening in Gaza, is that if Hamas gave the hostages back, it would turn the tables and put the pressure on Israel to stop the attacks on Gaza. So I think we have to remember who started this latest phase in the conflict. It's Hamas, supported by Iran. And the pressure should be put on them. And the final point I would make about the Prime Minister's position to recognise Palestine, it strikes me as very odd. It's a state without any borders, without any government. It is entirely a symbolic gesture, probably to do with internal Labour Party politics, and it doesn't do anything to get the hostages back. But it gives, as has been said by Hamas, it gives them a victory. It's what they say the fruits from the 7th of October attack on innocent Israeli citizens.
Yeah, it's not exactly a good look for Keir Starmer when he's actually being praised by Hamas. You talked about the internal pressures there and the fact that so many people within the Labour Party have signed letters, they've put pressure on Keir Starmer. He moved very quickly, didn't he, Graham, from saying there has to be some sort of roadmap to a solution to actually saying that he would recognise a Palestinian state. I wonder what you think will be the upshot of all of this in the Middle East, because Netanyahu has been warned by Hamas that they say if he takes Gaza City, that there could be, as they say, a sacrificing of the hostages. We think 20 of them are still alive. Of the 50 that Hamas still hold, they hold the bodies of others that they have murdered. I just wonder where you see this going, Graham, and what the UK should do, especially as Israel has said that security ties could be cut with the UK if they move in the direction of recognising a Palestinian state.
A lot of questions there. I think one of the consequences of the threat, and it is a threat to recognise Palestine, is that not only to Israel but to the international community, we will be seen as an unreliable ally. I mean, Israel has got one of the best spy networks in the world, and they cooperate with MI6 as well as with the CIA. To be locked out of their information is not in this country's interest. I'm not in a position to judge whether Hamas will kill the 20 hostages that they're reputed still to hold. It wouldn't surprise me. They seem to be starving them to death, ill-treating them, torturing them. They've already killed a number of hostages. It's a tragic situation. But I think threatening to kill them is just another piece of wickedness from Hamas. And I understand why Israel believe force is necessary to get those hostages back.
Okay. Overnight, there have been quite major moves, really, on Ukraine as well. Let's hear what Donald Trump has been saying on that.
Looking at territory that's been fought over for 3.5 years with, a lot of Russians have died, a lot of Ukrainians have died. So we're looking at that, but we're actually looking to get some back and some swapping. It's complicated. It's actually nothing easy. It's very complicated, but we're going to get some back. We're going to get some switched. There'll be some swapping of territories to the betterment of both.
Well, the swapping of territories, giving up any land, is something that Zelensky has already said, the president of Ukraine, has said that he doesn't want to do. What do you make of this, Graham?
I think there are parallels with Gaza and Palestine in as much as there seems to be a reward for Putin for invading a sovereign country in Ukraine. Trump is going to see Putin in Alaska without Zelensky there. That strikes me as a pat on the back and giving more importance to Putin, who has behaved appallingly in this situation by invading Ukraine. 1 million of his own soldiers have either been killed or wounded, many Ukrainian civilians and their armed forces have been killed. Putin is the aggressor. I believe Trump should be speaking to Zelensky first, and he then should be putting pressure on Putin. I don't believe that Ukraine really has any Russian territories to swap anymore, so I don't see where that goes as a negotiation.
What about the suggestion that the UK should be involved in some way? Is that just posturing, or is it realistic to say that the UK has a role to play here? Because really this is about America as the, possible peace broker in all of this. Trump says that he has brokered 6 ceasefires since becoming president. I'd be a little bit sceptical about that. But nonetheless, this is clearly Zelensky, Putin, Trump, is it not?
Yes, I think what the Middle East shows and the Ukraine and Russia shows is our diminished status in the world. Our armed forces are at their weakest point for, I wouldn't be able to put a figure on it, but for a long, long time. The Secretary of State for Defence has said we can't put a division into the field. So any role we have in helping to secure a ceasefire, a peace deal, would be very limited indeed. We need to invest more in our armed forces because the background to both the Middle East and Russia's aggression is that the world is a much more dangerous and less stable place. But our role in both those conflicts is de minimis, I think.
Yes, it's an interesting one. I just wonder from the domestic perspective as well, just going back to the Middle East, actually, we have people who will be in support of Palestine action today. Look, if people want to exercise their free speech, even though I disagree with them, they can, be in favour of the Palestinian cause. That is something that we do in this country. That is freedom of speech. That's freedom of assembly. That's something Hamas and other terrorist organisations don't like and clamp down on. But if they're supporting Palestine action, should those people be arrested, Graham?
Yes, they're breaking the law. I voted to prescribe Palestine action. Unfortunately, there were two other pretty obscure terrorist groups who were on the same prescription list in the vote. So I voted to prescribe all three. But if it had been Palestine action on its own, I would have voted to prescribe them, because the law is relatively clear on what a terrorist organisation is. It is a body that tries to achieve political ends through intimidation and violence, and Palestine Action fit that bill perfectly. They've hurt people, they've attacked people, they've attacked property. So if they're people who are supporting Palestine Action are breaking the law, then the police should enforce the law.
I wonder if I can ask your thoughts on this story. The front page of the Daily Telegraph today, we actually spoke to the owner of a store yesterday. It's a retro store. It has all sorts of things from the past, and things from clothing to records and all the rest of it. He put up a sign saying that due to scumbags who were shoplifting, that he was going to put cases over things that people needed to ask him before they looked in. He's been criticised and indeed received a call from the police, an actual physical visit from the police, who said that this could be offensive to call shoplifters scumbags. Are shoplifters scumbags?
Yes, of course they are. They're criminals, they're scumbags, and lots of other unpleasant names one could call them. It is not against the law to be offensive, and the police should know that. I'm the vice chair of the all-party group on freedom of speech, and I've written articles about it. The police should spend more time arresting shoplifters and less time on policing what's happening on the internet and interviewing and arresting people for non-criminal, what they call hate crimes. It is not an offence in this country to be rude about somebody.
I wonder if you could respond just finally to this message from Jason in the Lake District, who has been in touch with us. He says, Graham Stringer is always very sensible. I can't understand why he is a Labour MP. What would you say to him?
Well, I would hope all Labour MPs were sensible. But it's part of democracy that not all Labour MPs agree about things. There are two ways of being an MP in terms of discussing things. One is to look what the policy is and find lines to follow so that you agree always with the policy. The other way of dealing with it is to think through the problem and come to your own view within the context of being a Labour MP. I agree with the basic tenets of the Labour Party that we want a fairer, more democratic society, so I'm very happy to be a Labour MP, but I try to think through individual problems as they are.
If only others did the same. Graham, thank you very much indeed. That is Graham Stringer there, who is the Labour MP for Blackley and Middleton South. In just a second, we're going to speak to Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary. He'll be in the studio. Stay with us.
they are, the migrants living the life of luxury in hotels that frankly should be contributing to the local economy, boosting tourism and hospitality to our coastal towns and cities. We're going to put any old Tom, Dick and Harry from Afghan, Syria and Tunisia in there instead. And it will not surprise you to find out that more than 100 rapes have been reported every single year in the last 2 years. And if you compare that back to statistics 10 years ago, before the advent of migrant hotels, it was fewer than half that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, is in the studio. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning. Good to be here.
You have had quite the 24 hours in regard to reaction to the penalty fare notices. We're going to just watch the video again. You've seen it because you were in it. But let's just remind ourselves of what Robert Jenrick did a few weeks ago now, and there has been quite a reaction. This is in regard to fare dodgers on the London Underground. Let's just remind ourselves of the original video.
Excuse me, do you think it's all right not to pay? Seriously, why do you go back through the barrier and pay? Do you want to go back and pay like everybody else? Do you think it's all right not to pay? Why don't you go back and pay? You can say off as much as you want. Oh, no, but everyone else has to pay. You're carrying a knife, you say? Nearly 1 in 25 people using London's public transport aren't paying for it. So there's 8 officers down there, but 1 minute away, that gate's wide open. It's also just annoying watching so many people break the law and get away with it. Or at least most of it. Right, should we go over here to these guys here? Excuse me, gents. Hello, hello. You're on camera, mate. You're bang to rights. Just step to the side. All right, thanks very much, guys. It's the same with bike theft, phone theft, tool theft, shoplifting, drugs in town centres, weird Turkish barber shops. It's all chipping away at society. The state needs to reassert itself and go after lawbreakers.
Robert Jenrick there with that video. Now, this was in, when was that actually, Robert? It was in...
That was about 2 months ago, yeah.
A couple of months ago. And what has happened since then is that the number of fines issued to fare dodgers has gone up by nearly 60%. A lot of this, actually, these kind of issues, including that specific one, Robert, just kind of remind us that if the will is there, the law can be implemented, and people like fare dodgers who just annoy so many people, including you, can actually be dealt with.
Yeah, look, I think absolutely. That's the public feel like mugs right now because they're playing by the rules. They're paying their fare on the bus, the tram. If they're down in London on the tube, they're getting on with their daily lives as law-abiding members of our country. And yet, a small number of people are getting away with stuff, whether it's fare dodging or shoplifting, mobile phone theft, nicking tradesmen's tools from their vans, and seemingly nothing is happening. The authorities and the police are not taking action. They consider these to be minor crimes, not worthy of their attention. They're too busy policing people's tweets or knocking on doors about things that frankly are not the preserve of the police at all. What this has shown is that if the will is there, it can actually be done. And so what I want to have happen now is the same vim and vigour be shown to tackling the phone theft, the burglaries, the shoplifting, all these other crimes that are making people's lives miserable across the country and dragging the country down and contributing to this sense that people feel that the country's just sort of bumping along the bottom. It's not going anywhere. I want the streets to be safe and clean and crime to be being investigated and the criminals, particularly the prolific criminals, the people who are really contributing to a vast amount of the crime, to be being arrested, going to prison, keeping our streets safe again.
It's interesting you mentioned shoplifting there. I spoke to Rob Davies yesterday from page of the Daily Telegraph today.
Isn't that mad?
Well, I was about to say.
It's completely mad.
Are you happy to call shoplifters scum?
Of course they're scum. I mean, I would use stronger terms than that. I think he probably minced his words when he put that notice on the shop window, wherever it was. Look, I was up in Durham the other day talking to 2 shopkeepers there, and they were absolutely sick to their back teeth of people nicking from their store, to the point that they were having to take things off the shelves, pretty basic normal products like Lurpak or corned beef, and try and find cheaper versions of those products because they were being stolen every single day, and they just couldn't afford to continue to stock them. And they had been putting on Facebook some of the CCTV from their shop of them actually going and taking matters into their own hands, you know, grabbing the people who were nicking stuff from their store, bringing them back in, holding them whilst the police were called. And this created a bit of a sensation up in County Durham. But this is happening all over the country. And good people like that, who are just trying to go about their daily business, run businesses on tight margins, are sick of this. They want the police to take action. And a better way is possible. We can fix this. We need to get the police out onto the streets, taking action, arresting people, and then we need the courts and our judiciary to be able to say to the people who are really responsible for a large number of these crimes, remember that 50% of all the crime in this country is being committed by just 9% of the criminals. These are the so-called hyper-prolific offenders. We need these people being sent to prison. Keeping them off the streets as a matter of public protection. That's what I want to see.
So you are, I think, in that video, which has been seen by 15 million plus people?
Yeah, I think across all of the platforms, it's now about 25 million people.
Okay, so up to 25 million people. So you're talking about a very substantial number of people, some of whom it will resonate with. Some people will say, why is he wearing that silly shirt? You know, there are lots of different
opinions. The shirt-divided opinion has to be said.
But what my point is that piece of action that you took about fare dodgers, which is a pretty basic but straightforward issue that connected with a lot of people, I would argue, and I don't mean to be I don't mean to be sycophantic here, but I would argue that has actually been the most effective bit of opposition from the Conservatives over the last year. What does it say that 25 million people have seen that, but very, very few people are actually responding to Kemi Badenoch's messages?
Well, look, firstly, what I have come to see is that understandably, people have a pretty low opinion of politicians right now because the country feels like it's broken. People's living standards are low. Immigration is far too high. People are waiting too long for NHS appointments. Young people can't get on the housing ladder. And so as a politician, as somebody who wants to help to lead the country, I think you've got to get out of Westminster, get out of a suit, take up everyday issues and show that you're actually trying to get stuck in and do something. And as we've seen with this issue of fare dodging, you can have results. You can shame authorities into action. You can get stuff done, make the country a better place, show that there is a better way to achieve things. Now, for the Conservative Party, more generally, look, I think we're in a difficult place. Without question, we just suffered our worst ever election defeat. And I've been painfully honest about the reasons why that happened. It was because we let people down. We didn't deliver on immigration, on the NHS, on tax. And it's going to take a long time and a lot of effort for us to turn that around. Kemi is our leader. She's working hard. She's actually had results in recent months.
What results has she had?
Well, look at some of the things that she's forced the government to do, like reverse tax on the winter fuel payment.
Wasn't that pressure from their own party?
Well, I think it was a combination of the two. It was Kemi at Prime Minister's Questions who was pushing Keir Starmer on that, and Rachel Reeves. Look at the grooming gangs scandal. I think one of the worst scandals to afflict this country in my lifetime. Labour did not want initially to do a full national inquiry. They've now been forced into a version of that. And that's very important because I want the truth to come out about that. So Kemi is doing her job. She's holding the government to account. But I'm under no illusions. This is going to be a hard road for the Tory party.
Do you think you do a better job than her?
No, I'm just doing my job, which is Shadow Justice Secretary, taking up these issues, whether it's fare dodging or shoplifting, the crime and issues that are afflicting our criminal justice system right now. But as a party, we've got to show that we have learnt the lessons from our time in office, that we've listened to the public, and that we're coming forward with serious answers. Because I'm fundamentally optimistic about the country. I think we are a strong country, we're a great country, we can turn things around, but what we've got to do is bring forward some serious answers. How are we going to get people's wages up? How are we going to help to make sure the NHS is working? How do we bring down immigration? If we can do that, then I think people will start to come back to us in time.
I've quite a number of other things I want to ask you about, but I want to read a message from Geraint, who is in Cowbridge. He said, I voted Conservative all my life and even voted for Kemi in the leadership election. She's been a big disappointment and now a Reform UK member. I almost hate the Conservative Party for what they allowed to happen in regard to immigration. I like Robert Jenrick's approach, and the only way I would even consider voting Conservative again is if he was leader. That, and if half the Conservative MPs that should be in the Lib Dems left the party too. What would you say to Geraint?
Well, look, I understand his frustration and anger about the performance of the last Conservative government. At the end of the day, I resigned from Cabinet under Rishi Sunak precisely on that issue, on immigration, because I didn't feel that we were going in the right direction. I knew what the answer was. With the small boats, it was to scrap some of our human rights laws, leave the European Convention on Human Rights, and then detain and deport everyone who was willing to come into the country.
Won't work.
Absolutely not. I don't think it's got a cat in hell's chance of working unless each and every one of those people coming across on small boats were detained and removed back home to their own country. That's what we need to do. And I was frustrated that there wasn't the political will to actually get on and do the job. And of course there isn't now under Keir Starmer. Things are actually getting worse. And that makes me sad for the country. But what the Tory party has got to do is be honest about what it got wrong and almost be a new party. You know, set out to forge something that is new, that responds to the challenges that the country is facing and bring forward serious answers. I don't think, incidentally, that is reform. Look, I understand why people are drawn to reform. They are speaking for many people in this country right now.
What do you disagree with at the Reform UK side?
I think that Nigel, who I know reasonably well, is a good bloke who I would go to the pub with for a pint, but I don't think he is the man that you want in charge of your kid's school.
Why?
Or fixing hospitals. Because from the people that I speak to in Reform, I don't think there is any serious thought going into how do we actually solve the problems that are facing the country. They are speaking for millions of people. They're articulating the depth of anger and frustration and disillusionment that there is right now in the country, but they are not putting in the hard yards to think, how do we actually turn this around?
Well, a lot of people say that your party doesn't have a plan either, actually. And Kemi Badenoch keeps saying, well, we're going to have a review and a policy review and all the rest of it. Your party is not providing an alternative. The polls are reflecting that, and Reform UK is almost twice what your party is in many polls.
Well, look, we're 3 or 4 years away from a general election, so a lot will happen in that time.
Honestly think the Conservatives can win the next election?
Yes, I do, but I'm under no illusions about how difficult that path actually is. But I do think that there are ways of turning this country around. I mean, look at the moment living standards. People all feel hard up right now. They feel like the economy is just bumping along the bottom. But if we can ensure that we have a sensible tax regime in this country, stop taxing businesses to the point where they're laying people off right now, if we can get the country building again so that young people can get on the housing land, if we're going to have a sensible energy policy so that we're not going hell for leather for net zero and deindustrialising our country, so we're trading cars manufactured in Sunderland for ones in China, or oil and gas drilled in the same sea but from Norway rather than by our own workers in the North Sea. If we can bring forward sensible, common sense policies like that, I think we can get the country back on its feet again.
You have been pictured on a number of occasions running in, speaking about your sartorial choices, we talked about the shirt earlier, but you have a hoodie that has on it quite simply Hamas or terrorists, which is factually correct. Palestine Action, many people will be protesting in support of them today. Should they be arrested?
Well, it's a prescribed terrorist organisation, and so support for it is a criminal offence. So absolutely the police should be out on the streets clamping down on those people. I think Palestine Action is an anti-British organisation. They have, for example, invaded our military bases, damaging military equipment, endangering our national security. That is why Parliament ultimately voted to prescribe them as a terrorist organisation. So it's absolutely right that those laws are enforced. And if something is a terrorist organisation, whether it's Hamas, Hezbollah, or indeed Palestine Action, there should be absolute zero tolerance for people who are supporting it.
Do you think Netanyahu's course of action in regard to saying he's going to take over all of Gaza is the right one? Because he's been criticised by a lot of people, not just internationally, but even the head of the army, head of the IDF has criticised him. What do you think?
Well, I want this conflict to end. There is immense suffering now in Gaza, as there has been on the Israeli side as well. Remember, there's still 50 Israelis who are held hostage in Gaza. So this has got to end. We've got to make sure that we can draw this to a close. It's very difficult to see a path through that because you can't negotiate with Hamas. This is a terrorist organisation, it's a death cult, frankly.
I mean, there have been talks about ceasefires
but I want to see this conflict come to an end. I think that's what most people want to see right now, and it not be perpetuated.
But is
by
Netanyahu's approach the right one?
Look, I have reservations about that because I don't see how that is going to help to draw this to a close now. But I appreciate that the security of Israel and the release of the hostages must come first and foremost.
What about Ukraine? Do you think they should give territory to Russia? It seems that Trump is suggesting that overnight. Zelensky's rejected it. Where do you stand?
Well, I've always supported Ukraine throughout this conflict. I had Ukrainian refugees come and live with me for a long period of time, and I feel very strongly that this war must end, but it must end in a way which sends a very clear signal to Vladimir Putin that the kind of action that he's done in recent years will not be tolerated, that he can't go on and regroup and invade other places in the future. But at the moment, tens of thousands of lives are being lost, billions of pounds are being spent. This is a conflict that's got to come to an end, and so I want to see a negotiated solution to it as soon as possible, because it serves neither side for this misery and slaughter of young men, both Ukrainian and Russian, to continue for months or even years into the future.
Just before you go, there's been a bit of a controversy this week in Reform UK about digital ID. Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, has talked a little bit about maybe having a think about it. What's your opinion on digital ID?
I'm personally against ID cards, and I don't think that they will make any contribution to stopping illegal migration. Look, if you are an employer who is employing illegal workers, in almost every case you're doing so dishonestly. You know that those people are not workers that you should be taking on. You're already obliged by the law to do checks into their visa and their status here in the UK. The black economy is very important. We've got to clamp down on it. I increased fines for employers who were employing people against the law tenfold when I was a minister. So those car washes, the nail bars, the construction sites, the care homes, the barbers, the places where people are, in some instances, employing workers illegally, they should be being raided. The employers should be being arrested and fined in accordance with the current laws. But the idea that you'd have to have an ID card, I don't think will make any material difference to that challenge. It seems to me to be very expensive, impractical and overbearing on law-abiding Brits who don't deserve to have that.
I wonder as well, there's a story, just finally before you go, sorry I have said finally a couple of times, but this is actually finally. There's a story from the Home Office today on Operation Equalise. It's talking about illegal workers being arrested in this national enforcement surge, a £5 million funding boost to intensify enforcement action. We seem to have quite a lot of policies from Labour. It seems every day they're giving us something new. They're saying we're going to send people to prison for 5 years for advertising small boat crossings on TikTok, which is already illegal. £5 million, as we both know, is not an awful lot of government money. It would be great to have it in our own personal bank accounts, but that's not a lot of government money. I just wonder whether you think there's anything the government has done since it came to office that is actually tackling this issue of migration and clamping down on things like illegal workers and delivery drivers.
Well, look, I've heard all these things before, and don't get me wrong, some of them may be sensible things to do, but this is basically just a deflection from the fact that the number of people coming across on small boats is rising. It is rising massively. And we're heading now into the peak season for arrivals, August, September and October. This is almost certainly going to be a record year for small boat arrivals. It's already up 50% on the prior year. So it's completely out of control. It's a total mess. And people are rightly furious about this. We're an island nation, for goodness sake. We should be able to control our borders. The only way to fix this is to have a proper deterrent, not 20 in, 1 out, as Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper are proposing, but every single person who comes across on a small boat is detained and immediately removed, either back home to their own country or to a safe third country. That's the only way we can fix this. And the tragedy of the situation is we actually know that. We know what the answer is, but we just got to have leaders who've got the political will, the guts, frankly, to get on and do what's necessary. And you've seen elsewhere in the world that if you do that, if you step up and take action, it can have a massive effect. Look in Australia, where they fixed this within months. Look what's happened in the United States, where within a short period of time, the numbers crossing the southern border, which seemed completely out of control at the turn of the year, been brought right down, maybe even to zero. We can do that in our own country as well. But it will require leadership. It's above party politics now. People are absolutely sick of this. And that's why across the nation this weekend, fair-minded, patriotic people will be protesting because they don't want hotels in their communities. They don't want people, frankly, from backwards countries hanging around at the school gates and in the playgrounds. We've got to end this. We've got to see the Prime Minister step up and take the action that's needed.
OK. Robert Jenrick, Shadow Justice Secretary, thank you very much indeed
for
joining me in studio today on Talk. What do you think of what he said? Let me know. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Performative, badly timed declarations of Keir Starmer, the Canadian Prime Minister, and Macron, who basically gave a gift to Hamas. They said, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to sit down and negotiate a ceasefire. All you have to do is wait till September and we'll announce Palestinian statehood. So the people who are criticizing Netanyahu today for this going all-out war are the same people that essentially gave Hamas permission to walk away from the negotiating table.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who has been in touch about both the interviews, both with Graham Stringer and Robert Jenrick. Another Robert has been in touch and says Jenrick was in power and was totally ineffective. I'd rather trust Farage than ever vote Conservative again. It does sound as though he should join Reform UK, but to believe the Conservatives could win the next election made me gasp. They are now a legacy tail-end party, says Robert. Another person says Jenrick is speaking my language. Matt and Hove says tell Jenrick the public feel like mugs because the majority voted for this lot. Over the last 14 years he did absolutely zilch in government. He'll probably win a seat in 2029, but his party is finished, says Matt in Hove. And Rachel's been in touch in regard to the shopkeeper, that's Rob Davies. We spoke to him yesterday, actually, on Drive. He put up a sign saying that shoplifters were scumbags. Robert Jenrick has agreed with that. Rachel says regarding the poor shopkeeper, when has offending someone become a criminal offence? I don't think I'm being overly dramatic in being very concerned about this. The trend of behaviour from police. I doubt if you'd even get a phone call if you get robbed these days, but 3 officers, really? Rachel, you've got to go back and listen to it. It's on my Twitter, actually, at Peter Cardwell and at talkTV as well. It was really interesting to hear what he said. And just one more from Tad in Cambridge, who says Graham Stringer is one of the few Labour MPs who have any integrity left. The rest are so smitten by their own importance. When Labour finally sinks beneath the waves into the abyss, I hope Graham Stringer could quickly find a home elsewhere. That is Tad in Cambridge there. Let's speak now to Max Harrison. He's a Reform UK councillor for Sheppey. Max, great to have you in the studio. How are you doing?
Good, thank you very much, Peter. How are you?
I'm very well. You heard both those interviews with those 2 MPs. What are your impressions from what they said?
Oh, bless Robert Jenrick. I know he's trying his best in his weekly leadership bid and going on a media interviews and whatnot.
Harsh.
They are finished. I mean, if you look at the by-election results we had this week, Reform UK won every single one. In Carmarthenshire, in Cannock Chase and Durham, the Tories are finished. Even in recent polling, we're on 32% and the Conservatives are on 16%. They are an extinct political force. He is doing his best to try and have some sort of resurgence. No one on the ground is listening. You know, if you look at even the membership reform, it's gone up 5,000 in the last few weeks.
Well, we've had someone saying that Jenrick's speaking their language, that he's connecting at least with some of our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, but he's a political chameleon. You know, this is a Remainer. He's a Cameronite Conservative, and now he's come out following his massive election defeat, which everyone could see was going to happen, and he's pretending that he's now some darling of the right, some Thatcherite. Nobody is listening to Robert Jenrick. You know, he can try his best. Kemi Badenoch is going to kill off the Conservative Party. You know, next year in Wales, Reform UK will be the largest party. There's no doubt about it. I think the Conservatives will end up in single digits in the Senate elections. They are over. There is a new force in British politics. It is Reform UK. And if we want to get rid of Keir Starmer, the only way of doing that is voting for us and getting Nigel Farage into number 10.
Yeah, you can't seem to have message discipline this week. You don't. You're one of your own MPs, Sarah Pochin, and it's perfectly fine. And just to be really clear and hopefully fair to Sarah Pochin, she said it was her personal opinion in regard to being okay with digital IDs. She came on Alex's show this morning and changed her mind. You know, there are a number of instances like that where Reform UK don't seem to be singing from the same hymn sheet.
Yeah, of course, and we need to have rigorous debate. You know, we are building a policy platform to get us ready to win the next election and form the next government. You know, yes, there will be times when different members and different politicians might have different opinions. You know, I'm at Kent County Council, there's 56 of us. We all have very different views and opinions on things like how we deal with asylum seekers, on things like how we deal with local government.
Surely you've got to have a united, like on Kent County Council, you've got to have a united message. You've got to come together and say, right, what's our policy on this? What are we doing locally? What are we doing nationally? There has to be some sort of sophistication there, doesn't there?
No, of course. And of course, if she comes out with an opinion, and a few days later...
I'm not criticising Sarah Pochin, by the way. She was perfectly honest and perfectly straightforward.
To have her opinion,
she's been vilified online, and I think that is unfair, actually, because people often say we want politicians to be honest. She came on this morning, she's changed her opinion on that. That's fair enough. I'm not criticising her necessarily, and she has been criticised a lot online. She doesn't need me to criticise her. And actually, I hope it was an honest question and an honest interview. But there are issues there. It's not just Sarah Pochin. There are issues there. You've had councillors resigning, for example. You've had people moving in different directions on that. I mean, Reform UK is popular, but it's not unified, is it?
Well, since the elections in May, only 5 councillors have actually either moved or resigned. You know, it's not a big cohort. We won 677 in May. Only 5 are left. And if we look about internal discipline, you look at the Labour Party. You know, we've seen people have their whips suspended. You know, the backbenchers now run the government. 2-tier Keir.
I mean, you've had 2 MPs who have left since Reform UK became a party in or became a parliamentary party, I should say, in July 2024. I mean, Rupert Lowe has left. That's what really difficult recriminations there. And James McMurdoch, who wasn't vetted at all, who has had to leave under a bit of a cloud, allegations he denied.
And of course, let's say, if you take your point, we lost 2 MPs, and of course we've gained 1 in Runcorn with a historic win.
Yeah, although it's a big win. Big win.
But look at the polls. It's not batting an eyelid. Nothing is changing. Yes, no one said the road was going to be easy. For Nigel Farage, this is an individual who many years ago was he retired, and now he's come back into frontline politics. Nobody said the course of this journey was going to be easy. There will be bumps in the road, but in the impact of Rupert Lowe, or the case of James having to become an independent, we're now at the highest poll ratings we've had. We've just won 100% of the by-elections this week. We will have difficult times, I am sure, like any other political party, but we have got all the momentum in British politics, and the polls and the results week in, week out prove it.
Tell me how it has been for you on Kent County Council, because reform came in, you've been a councillor from May, and quite a number of councillors said, we're going to really change things. On Kent County Council, as you say, you have 56 councillors. Yep. That is a huge number of councillors. What's the total, 60, is it?
The total number is 81.
81, okay. 81. So you're really dominating that council. Have you been able to get your way, or has the blob pushed back?
Do you know, I think in terms of actually political party platform, yes, we have had our own way. We've reduced spending, and we've made savings up to £39 million on scrapping net zero nonsense. If you take, for example, we've already reduced the debt by 16 million. And the fact that we're not moving Kent County Council to Invicta House just across the road, we saved an additional £14 million. So, when we came in, it was £740 million in debt. The interest daily payments alone were £84,000. We've reduced
£84,000 a day?
A day on the debt.
On interest, right.
And if you take, for example, our first act, we reduced our councillor salaries by 5%, which means that we have additional £200,000 to go out to member grants. So, yes, we have a lot of success. I'm very proud of the work we've done. And in terms of asylum seekers, our leader, Councillor Lyndon Kim Karen, has written to the Home Secretary to point out we don't want this nonsense in our council.
Is the Home Secretary going to listen? I just wonder. And also, within that, what is the actual power of a local council to say to national government, actually, we don't want this here? Because we've seen in Epsom, for example, that's happened. We've also, you also have huge pressures of things you can't control, like the cost of social care.
Oh, no, of course. Certainly our adult social care budget 70%. But of course,
70% of what Kent County Council does. 70% is adult social care.
Yeah, it's adult social care and child integrated services. Many of these things that we can't actually change or touch. But if you take, for example, asylum seekers, one of our colleagues, Councillor Paul Chamberlain, has highlighted recently that the old Methodist Church in Herne Bay has now been occupied for the Home Office. Rumour has it for the purposes of either housing or processing illegal migrants. So we don't want them in this county. We're at the front line of illegal immigration. Already, since Labour have been in, 45,000 have broken into our country, and this year alone, since January, 25,000 have. We have got a massive problem. Yes, there's very little that Kent County Council can do to stop either A, the boats coming across, or B, the abilities to not house these people. But actually, we live in a democracy. We won a huge majority of the share of the vote back in May. If Labour government don't want to listen to us, that's fine. All you're doing is reinforcing your point that you're not going to listen to us. You're going to ignore the will of the people, and reform will just get stronger and stronger in the Garden of England.
I want to play you a voice note now from Polly, who has been in touch about the trans issue in your party, another controversy this week. This is what Polly has to say.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Yet another reformer. Peter, I love your programme. I admire you immensely. But do you think somebody at Talk could realise there are now thousands of ex-reformers? We are going to advance UK. Do you think somebody could actually wake up and start discussing this? Reform will not form the next government. They no longer have the trust of so many people. Still respect you immensely. Bye.
Polly, thank you. Polly has a very good point there. Not just that I'm a great broadcaster, but no, sorry, I'm joking. No, on a more serious note, no, Polly does have a serious point in that there are people who have been Reform UK supporters and have moved away. Every day, every time I present on this programme, or almost every time, I get messages from people who say, yeah, okay, actually I've kind of moved on from Reform UK. Obviously you're riding high in the polls, there's no doubt about that. I'm not taking that.
Winning by-elections.
And winning, all right, fair enough, winning by-elections. I'm not taking that away from you at all. But there are people who've come to you and are disillusioned. What would you say to people like Polly, for example, who's joined Advance UK?
I think, we have to look at what is the greater good of this country. Advance UK is not even on 1% in the country. You know, it's barely, I think it's got 14,000 members. And I credit where credit's due, that's more than I thought they'd ever actually get. But on this journey, between now and the general election, we will gain huge elements of support from parts of the country which we never once thought Reform would ever have a chance. Look at Scotland in the Hamilton by-election, you know, 26% for us. That's huge. You know, Nigel hadn't been to Scotland for years, an area which we never thought. If you look at UKIP or the Brexit Party, Reform never would have had a chance. It was a massive result. So to those who have left us, you know, I'm very sorry and sad to hear that they've left us, but when it comes to the general election in 2028 or 2029, whenever it happens, and you hold that pen and you're deciding who to tick or cross, think about the greater good of the country. Either, when we get to that point, we can get Nigel Farage into number 10, or we can allow Keir Starmer to keep on destroying this brilliant and beautiful country.
Let's take a call now from Brian in London. Brian has given us a call about the police's priorities. Brian, what would you like to say?
Good morning, Peter.
Morning.
One of the reasons we've got too many people stabbing, raping, shoplifting and everything else around London is because the police have got the wrong priorities. They're currently doing a Vision Zero with Stursterdijk. And what they're doing is they want 1 million speeding fines in a year. Sadly, they only got 850,000 last year, naughty police. But that produces £85 million into Stursterdijk's coffers. Now, my experience the other day was Lavender Hill Police Station. Now, opposite is Lavender Gardens. Now, the two brave heroes wearing police high-vis, they could have gone and chased a rapist, fought a knife-wielding maniac, or you know, jumped on a shoplifter, but they chose to walk 100 feet across the road to Lavender Gardens, hide behind a car, and then nick someone for coming along at 24 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Now, it's a victim.
And in regard to those priorities, Brian, it's not just in London as well. I mean, I spoke to Rob Davies yesterday, the person who put up a handwritten note saying shoplifters are scum, and the police came round to him as well. It does make you question, surely there are bigger things, there are bigger fish to fry than people travelling at 24 miles an hour or putting up notices in their shops saying that shoplifters are scum, which, by the way, they are.
Well, it seems the police now, you know, unless they're ferrying protesters backwards and forwards to the right train station or bashing up women for protesting against rape, they don't seem to want to engage with people one-to-one fairly, you know what I mean?
Well, let me put those points. Sorry, Brian, final point there, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I've got to say, Robert Jenrick, after these problems are caused, the college, he done nothing about the College of Policing. Net Zero came in during his rule, and so did the 20 mile an hour debacle. Okay. Boris, Grant Shapps, and that cycling weirdo Will Norman. They produced all the problems that we've got now. So Jenrick's part of the problem. We can't. He's on the Titanic, mate, and he's going to hit the rocks without getting off.
Okay, thanks, Brian. I've got to put your points to Max there. I think you're probably in agreement. But are you happy to call shoplifters scumbags?
Absolutely, and I think actually worse than that. You know, in Kent, in the last few years, shoplifting has gone up by 55%. You know, and the idea that Robert Jenrick comes in and says, "Oh, we need to be tough on crime," it was under the Conservatives. This whole legal concept of anything below £200 is actually okay and justifiable, and for him to say, you know, oh, the police shouldn't be sort of policing our tweets, it came under them. All this noise coming from people like Robert Jenrick and others about the Online Safety Act, it was drafted by the Conservatives. So, no, the police do need to do a better job. I mean, the idea that we're going to have 3,000 riot police for those who are protesting in the 20 locations today about asylum seekers, I think is excessive. And, you know, again, when we look at what happened in Essex, you know, about Antifa, these masked far-left thugs, these are the ones, Peter, who are awful, rude and actually violent in most cases at these protests. And what did Essex Police? They put them in vans and they brought them to the protest. So the police's priorities are wrong. In Kent Police, for example, they've lost the complete confidence, not only of those who I speak to on the Isle of Sheppey, but those in wider Kent.
Just briefly, Tom says, reform, advance, restore Britain. They all need to grow up and pull together in the same direction. Their petty differences should not trump the needs of the country. Would you advocate getting people like Ben Abib back on board?
No, not at all. I mean, bitter Ben, he's in a mission to destroy Nigel Farage. If you look at Rupert Lowe's behaviour in the Commons where Nigel was heckled, he was laughing as well. These people do not want to see Nigel Farage and reform succeed. And now that Tommy Robertson has now joined Advance UK, again, I don't think that's a policy platform or the sort of advocacy that us at Reform UK want to support or endorse. So no, I don't see any mergers, I don't see any joining. We are our own entity, we're up in the polls, we're winning by-elections, and we are on course to winning the next general election.
Max, thank you. That's Max Harrison there, Reform UK councillor for Sheppey. Thanks for joining me in the studio. Thanks also to Elisa from Chelmsford, who says, credit to Graham Stringer MP for having the courage to disagree with his Prime Minister on the declaration of a Palestinian state or a two-state solution. Interestingly, though, he said there has long been a suspicion that Netanyahu is prolonging the war for his own power. Suspicion is not a fact. Nobody has provided any evidence of that accusation. Remember, Bibi's brother was killed by terrorists. I believe his motivation is predominantly to protect his people and their home. Keep up the great work, Peter, and have a great weekend, says Elisa in Chelmsford. Well, thank you for that. And also Cliff in Berkshire says, if, as according to the Labour MP, the law of what a terrorist is clear, I would say Hamas fits the definition, so why does Starmer wish to support them by effectively giving them statehood? Cliff, certainly Starmer has said on numerous occasions that Hamas are terrorists. He says that he wants a Palestinian state without them in power, but yes, there is a big debate there, and I'm more on your side than I am on Starmer's side, it must be said, Cliff. Plenty more to come. To keep with us here on Talk after the break.
My message to people smugglers is this. I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Smash the gangs. Smash the people smuggling gangs.
People smuggling puns.
He couldn't even smash an avocado for a piece of toast.
Or the people... What would that... The people...
I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash... Those... The smash...
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, when more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another two grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source. Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Keir Starmer's on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work. You just can't say it.
It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels, and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world, as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, that was a lively first hour. What do you think about what Robert Jenrick said? What about Graham Stringer said? And indeed Max from Reform. Lots of views coming in, 0344 499 1000. This hour we're going to talk about migration. Hundreds have been arrested in illegal delivery driver shutdown. That is a major victory for the Sun. We've been talking about it as well. We'll talk to Robert Bates in a second from the Centre for Migration Control. We'll also talk about 3 top hotels yards from Bournemouth Beach being used as migrant accommodation. Lots of people very, very annoyed about about this yesterday and the fact that there are anti-migrant protests around the country today. We'll also talk about Just Stop Oil and Palestinian protesters joining forces for a protest today. That's the front page of the Mail. Eco mob to join Gaza protests. Now, Just Stop Oil links up with the Ban Palestine Action. Fears of summer of chaos as hundreds risk arrest today. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the sad death of Jim Lovell, who was the commanding officer of Apollo 13. Remember the film with Tom Hanks? He has died, sadly. We'll talk to the space expert Andy Lound, and indeed about all the issues of foreign policy in regard to Ukraine. Lots to talk about with that. Simon Diggins coming up. Packed show between now and 12:30. Thank you to everybody who has been in touch. I will get to your messages in just a second. If you want to send me a voice note, if you want to give me a ring, the main number, of course, is 0344 499 1000. That's the number for WhatsApp text messages as well. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Lots to talk about between now and 12:30. Stay with me here on Talk. Well, thank you very much indeed to Jason from the Lake District. He says, Max is another sensible young man. He is a star. He also says, I could listen to Robert Jenrick all day. The right man at the wrong time. Ray in Liverpool says, I was thinking that Graham Stringer is remarkably sensible for a Labour MP. Michael says, please refrain from playing clips of Starmer. I've just finished my breakfast. Michael, don't worry. This show today, anyway, is going to be a Starmer clip-free zone. We've got lots of other clips to play, but we're not going to play any more of him. Dan and Kent says Ukraine will become the new Germany. East and West is the only way to peace. Trump's biggest aim, of course, is his legacy and the Nobel Peace Prize. Well, I'll give Obama one. I'll give you a prize. There'll be a special prize of one of Tech Up Dave's custard creams if you can tell me without Googling what Barack Obama got his Nobel Peace Prize for, because I can't remember. Thank you to Leslie, who says Graham Stringer is the only Labour MP I have respect for. He never sticks to the party line and tells it as it is. Also, Sarah in West Sussex says Starmer appears to be virtue signalling and appeasing those in his party who support Hamas and are anti-Israel. Hamas has had nearly 20 years to build its state. It would rather eradicate Israel and sacrifice its people in the process. Starmer knows nothing of the Montevideo Convention. None of its criteria have been met by Hamas, not one, says Sarah in West Sussex. Sarah, you're absolutely correct. And another one says, you're absolutely right, it's about political will in terms of changing the country. They say it, but they don't implement it. It's a national crisis, the migration situation, and patience is running out regarding democracy, and Parliament needs to recognise that as soon as possible. The economy and infrastructure are breaking, says that person. Well, it's interesting that we have had a number of moves, a number of new policies announced this week in regard to migration. Robert Bates is with us. He's Research Director of the Centre for Migration Control. Robert, good morning.
Morning, Peter. Thanks for having me.
A new policy from the government. There seems to be a new one every day at the moment. Hundreds of arrests have been made across the UK following a week-long crackdown on riders working illegally for delivery firms. This is sort of Uber Eats, Deliveroo, Just Eat, those kind of things. Under Operation Equalise, the Home Office's immigration enforcement teams have launched a nationwide intensification week of activity targeting illegal working hotspots with a focus on the gig economy and migrants working as delivery riders. A total of 1,780 individuals were stopped and spoken to, leading to 280 arrests for illegal working activity. Again, this comes back to, I mean, good for them, fine, tick, well done, Yvette Cooper, have a biscuit. The point is that they're just implementing the law, Robert. That's all they're doing. They're implementing the law that's already there, that's not being implemented by them or the police or immigration enforcement anyway. They're just doing what they're meant to be doing, and then they're going, look at us, aren't we amazing?
That's spot on, Peter. And, I don't know why we need an intensification week. If we're intensifying our efforts, why aren't we doing it
every week?
Round? Yes, exactly. We should have an intensification year or an intensification parliament, because this is clearly a huge problem. It's clearly one of the main draw factors why those looking to come to Britain are so eager to do so, because of the fact that we are frankly not doing any of the appropriate right to work checks on the scale that we should be doing. Individuals have clearly cottoned on to the fact that these delivery companies are a very easy way to make extra money on top of course, the money that the taxpayer is being forced to give them as well. So, I'm very glad to see that Yvette Cooper's perhaps cottoned on to the reporting that The Sun was doing on this issue and realised that actually this is a big problem. But it really feels very small fry when you actually look at the numbers. 280 doing this. The number is probably hundreds of times that we actually see people working in, not just the delivery companies, the car washes, the barber shops, the vape shops, all these enterprises that have kind of sprung up on high streets over the last few years are, in not all cases, obviously, but in some cases, outlets for the illegal working and this kind of grey economy that is a huge draw factor for Britain. So I would like to see a much bigger step up on the efforts done. Of course, immigration enforcement is actually chronically underfunded in this country. The number of people that work for immigration enforcement is about a fifth of the people that actually work for Durham County Council. So there's a huge issue of scale here, and whether if we were actually serious about properly clamping down on illegal working, we would see a lot more investment in immigration enforcement.
That's very interesting. So how many people actually work in immigration enforcement in this country? Do you know the number off the top of your head?
About 5,000. It's about 5,000.
That's nothing. That is nothing. 5,000 people work in migration enforcement. That's
with an annual budget of a few hundred million. So this is something that's been really emaciated over years. It's really not been uplifted to meet the growing scale of this problem. And I think many people will actually be wondering whether the government and Whitehall has its actual priorities in the right place, especially when you see, not to go down another tangent, but the number of diversity officers, the amounts being spent on politically motivated net zero campaigns and things like that. We should be looking to actually bolster those parts of the state that do serve a really legitimate and really important function. I'd argue at the moment, immigration enforcement is one of the most important parts of what the state should be doing. But again, it sits there kind of dwindling, and even the number of inspections that were conducted in this recent intensification is really only a fraction of the number that should actually be being conducted. We need to do more to, of course, then also require businesses to conduct right-to-works checks and carry out those spot inspections as well. The numbers of them are very, very low as well. So there's a lot more that can be done. It's good that they've recognised that this is something that should be done, but they really need to upscale it massively.
Robert, there are many protests that have been happening over the past 24 hours, in fact over the past few weeks, more this weekend in regard to those migrant hotels. I'm sure you, like I, will understand the frustration of so many people who are taking part in those protests, and you, like I, will want to make sure that we emphasise that they have to be, of course, legal and safe at all times. There were 15 arrests last weekend, but that's a very, very small number in comparison to the thousands of people who took part. My point, I suppose, is that this is going on. There are many people joining them this weekend. Do you get the sense that anyone in government is actually listening?
Well, we do know now that protests do work. We saw the big furore over Epping Bell Hotel in Essex. We've also seen recently protests against plans to house asylum seekers in Waterlooville town centre have also been successful as well. So there is a clear link here between actually people appropriately conducting themselves, carrying out these protests against an imposition, the introduction of dozens, if not hundreds, of young undocumented males into their community, and policymakers having no choice to listen. Of course, the bigger problem is that this might work on a local scale, but we need to think about this in a national picture. And of course, the decision that was taken to not detain individuals and to instead put them in HMOs and to put them in hotels is something that is scattered around the country. And you can't really, unfortunately now, put the genie back into the bottle. The train has been sort of set in motion.
Well, the one-in, one-out policy that the government is pushing, they've sent us pictures of them in Marston and biometrically testing people and all the rest of it. Will that do anything to help the migration situation?
No, and those pictures that have been doing the rounds are, of course, what you actually see most times when individuals arrive on the beaches of Kent anyway. Most individuals that do arrive on a small boat are processed in Marston. You look at what the numbers are likely to be this year, about 800 people will be returned to France as an absolute maximum. That's about 2% of the people that will probably come across this year. So that leaves people coming across on the small boats with a very significant chance that they will be able to stay in the country. So I don't think it will be a deterrent. I think actually what it will do is just get us stuck in a kind of a sideshow, a mire, having to deal with this returns agreement with France, where, of course, then we end up taking individuals from France, a reciprocal number. We return the individual that arrived in Britain illegally, but then there's no guarantee that that individual won't try and cross again. And I think what we're really doing there is actually adding another element of problem to this situation, because, of course, those individuals that France is sending us are individuals that we will have to support because they're legitimate asylum seekers as adjudged by France and the Home Office. So therefore, there will be costs associated with that for a very long period of time. We know that refugees and asylum seekers have a very low economic activity rate, and therefore what we've actually done is really create another welfare dependency situation for ourselves that the Home Office perhaps hoped would be able to pull the wool over the eyes of the British public, but it is there, and it is something that will now be stuck on our budget sheet for a long time to come.
I wonder as well if I can ask you specifically about Bournemouth. This was a story front page of the Sun yesterday. We've heard from all sorts of people in all sorts of seaside destinations. Clearly, Bournemouth has plenty of hotels, but 3 of the top hotels just yards from the beach being used as migrant accommodation. Many people are saying they've spent thousands of pounds going on their holiday to Bournemouth, and they don't expect it to be, or they hadn't expected it to be in this case. A number of people got in touch yesterday when I was doing Drive between 4 and 7, saying they used to love to go to Bournemouth, but it's a very, very different place now.
I think that's it, and I think the numbers that are being introduced to areas such as Bournemouth, they might seem to policymakers in Whitehall as trivial and relatively small, a few hundred here and there, but they actually are a significant enough number to completely change the vibe, to change the atmosphere of a place such as Bournemouth. And then, of course, as well, you look at the associated criminal charges, the alleged criminality that is being associated with migrant hotels across the UK as well, and you realise that there is a very real risk associated with this process. Of course, not everyone in the media has quite been prepared to accept the link between illegal migration and crime, and I think it's something that certain politicians are doing a very good job to bang the drum on, despite the absolute obstinance from the likes of our traditional mainstream media to actually accept this risk. But people can feel it on the streets. People can recognise a certain vibe shift, a certain edginess, a certain not quite understanding how there's groups of young men loitering outside bus stops or engaging in activity that perhaps makes you feel uncomfortable, especially when you're with young children. So this is something that policymakers, perhaps when they look at their data spreadsheets, think, oh, this is, small fry, this is nothing to concern themselves with, but it has huge effects on the communities that are actually being blighted by these hotels. OK, Robert, thank you very much. That's Robert Bates there. He's Research Director of the Centre for Migration Control. Peter in Croydon has given me a ring about migration, 0344 499 1000. That's the number both for calls, voice notes and indeed for WhatsApps to come through. Let me know your thoughts on all of it. Peter, what are your thoughts this morning?
Hi, Peter, yeah. Thanks for taking my call. This is, in fact, about an FOI request into my council. Now, Croydon Council is, I think, still the largest borough in Greater London, and my FOI request was simply on the number of actual asylum seekers and the asylum seeker hotels. Mm-hmm.
Which is a perfectly legitimate thing to ask of your local council.
Well, thank you.
Did they not think so?
No, their response was, we don't hold this information.
Well, could they argue that it's actually the Home Office that you would need to send a request to? What have they said to you?
In fact, they did say referred to the Home Secretary. Yeah.
Because I think what happens,
Peter.
I think what happens here. Sorry, go ahead.
But when I've looked online, Peter, it says the public have a right to know this information. Yeah. And councils should have this information, and whether they have or not, I don't know. But the council are crap. Basically.
Well, it's interesting, Peter. I mean, I think a lot of councils just don't have the power in this regard. You look at Epping, for example. The council have just written to the Home Secretary and said, please close the Bell Hotel, the hotel there that's at the centre of all this controversy. So there's a lot of local councils that just don't have the power, but at the same time they're dealing with the consequences of so many asylum seekers in their areas, Peter, aren't they? As you are and as your council is in Croydon.
Well, yeah, like I say, there's no overall control. It's an awful government, local government. And I just want to make this one last point, Peter. You probably know who, but I do my FOI requests through What Do They Know? Have you heard of them?
I have, yeah. It's a very good website, yeah.
They are brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And what I've done is I've sent another one back with a review.
Yeah, okay. Well, keep us updated with all that, Peter. Thank you. That's Peter in Croydon there. And actually, he's mentioned that very good website, What Do They Know, which helps you put in FOI requests. You, as a citizen, of course, have a right to a lot of pieces of information. There's another really good website, actually, if you want to write to your MP, or even just find out who your MP is or your local councillors. A lot of people don't know who their local councillors are, which is fair enough. It's a great website called writetothem.com, just writetothem.com, and you can put in your postcode, and it tells you everybody you represent represents you, tells you all the different people and also ways to contact them as well. And if you want to be, if you want to ask your local councillor or your MP, or maybe there's a devolved power in your area, maybe there's a councillor, maybe there's a London or Manchester or Glasgow, you have a sort of larger council, devolved issues or whatever, your MLA in Northern Ireland, whatever it is, you can go to writetothem.com and find out. It's a really good website, and actually I find it very useful when something happens, there's maybe some crime or something like that, and you can put it in the postcode of where it happened and find out who the representatives are. It's a great website. Right then, I want to take a voice note from Kelvin about legal aid and migration.
Morning, Peter. With the migrants, if they stop giving them legal aid to take us to court to fight them, why are we giving them money to use against us to get the right to stay? If they come here, they should have money of their own, because they're going to need it for the court cases, so they should bring that money with them. We shouldn't be supplying it. I'll tell you why. 2023, I was sacked unfairly, went through ACAS, I got a good case against the company. 3 days before my court case was due, I needed to find £15,000 to fight my case. Why couldn't I get legal aid for that? A friend of mine who was abused through the 60s and 70s at a school here in Trentham in Staffordshire, he's now in ill health, very ill health. He's got cancers and growths in his throat, and he struggles. And when he went to court, he couldn't get legal aid either for fighting, so the whole thing is wrong. It stinks. It needs to be sorted. Anyway, bye.
Kelvin, thanks for your voice note there. I think, first of all, I'm really sorry to hear about your friend. It sounds as if your friend has had a really, really tough time at various points, including at the moment. I wish your friend all the very, very best for the battles ahead. Kelvin, the key point that you have put your finger on there is fairness. And there are loads of people in this country, loads of viewers and listeners to this station as well, who, they're not people who necessarily aren't compassionate. They're not people who necessarily aren't open. There aren't people who don't think that this could be a great country and that immigration can work in some degree. There are people who say zero migration, and I get that. I personally am not of that position. I think legal migration of skills that we need, that's fine to some degree, but it has to be limited. The point is that fairness is at the absolute heart of what you talk about there. What happened to you wasn't fair. What's happening to your friend isn't fair. And the fact that there are people who've contributed absolutely nothing, not a penny, to our economy, haven't paid any tax, or getting legal aid, is something that a lot of people find really unfair. I find it totally unfair. Why is that the case? We've got to keep asking these questions. We've got to keep putting the pressure on. We're going to do that here at Talk, the home of common sense. Lots more to discuss. I'll take your calls in just a second. You want to get your call in, use the break, lift the phone, talk to Sophie. Sophie's our assistant producer today. She lifts the phone. You have a chat with her. She's very friendly. Tell her the point you want to make, and then either in the next 10 minutes or indeed at some stage before 12:30, we'll give you a ring back, get you on the air. 0344 499 1000. Whatever you want to say, if it's within the law, we'll broadcast it, because we're the home of free speech, the home of common sense here at Talk. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to John in Redditch, he says, morning, the Labour Party should be renamed the Muppet Party and Starmer should be renamed Miss Piggy, as he is always selling porkies, says John from Redditch. Plenty of voice notes coming in. You can get yours in less than a minute, please. There's someone who sent one which was nearly 2 minutes. Tech Up Dave nearly spontaneously combusted, and with the sequel to Spinal Tap coming up, we need him. Paul has sent this voice note in.
Good morning, Peter. Regarding the officer attending the shopkeeper's shop to pass comment on his notice in the window regarding scumbags, this represents everything that's wrong about policing in the United Kingdom. Now, the sergeant and inspector, and if it went any higher, who authorised that visit should be sacked immediately. They clearly have got their priorities mixed up and they represent everything's wrong with policing. It seems to me that whether it's chief constable level or down at sergeant or inspector level, they're full of people that have just got stupid ideas and wrong views. Great show, Peter. Good morning.
Paul, thank you. I completely agree with every single word you said. Someone somewhere decided that because someone put it, we're just going to keep this on the screen. If you're watching it on the screen, I'm going to read it out to you if you're listening on the radio. This was a guy called Rob Davies. I spoke to him yesterday on Drive, and what happened was that, he runs a shop which has retro stuff in it, you know, stuff from the past, various records and clothing and various things that people want to buy from the past. And he put this message up on one of his cabinets, and he said, due to scumbag shoplifting, please ask for assistance to open the cabinets. Thank you. So there had been people who'd shoplifted stuff to the value of about £300 over the last few months. He'd reported it to the police. They'd taken no further action. There was a guy who actually was in the shop. He called the police, and he told me this all yesterday. The interview's online if you want to watch it on YouTube, or if you want to go to my Twitter at Peter Cardwell. I've retweeted it as well. Rob was telling me about a guy who was a shoplifter, a scumbag, who was about to steal a shirt. He then called the police. The police came and took his name and address and sent him on his way. No further action was taken, saying, give that shirt back. I mean, this is, surely that is so straightforwardly attempted theft. You know, the full force of the law should come down on those people, and the voice note we've just had makes complete sense. These are police officers, two of them, one community support officer, the sort of plastic police, and an actual police officer came to Rob Davies' shop and told him that this could cause offence. Well, guess what? Causing offence is not a crime. It just angers me to such a degree, and the voice note we've just had was just superb, and I agree with every single word. Let's hear another voice note from Nick.
Good morning, Peter. Nick Moore, Loughborough. I get sick and tired of hearing people like Robert Jenrick coming out with his populist solutions to common problems that we now all face. But through the last 5 years, not one politician who was in government at the time of lockdowns has since come out and said, the problems we face now all have one beginning, and that was the cowardly lockdowns that were imposed on this nation, destroying businesses' hopes and aspirations. And it's something that we are still recovering from and probably never will recover from. And not one of them ever talks about the biggest elephant in the room, and that is the lockdowns that caused the catastrophe that we now face. Have a good day, Peter.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate that. Appreciate Paul's voice note as well. Keep them coming in. 0344 499 1000. Ashley is in London and has given me a ring on that number. Ashley, you're very, very welcome to the programme. What point would you like to make this morning?
Hi, Peter. I was going to say a couple of points, really. Try and be quick.
Take your time. There's no rush. I'm not rushing you.
Okay. The first thing is my daughter lives in Epping. Mm-hmm. Yep. So we were there last night, and we had a good old drive through past everyone last night, and so on, and saw quite a few of the people. And
were there protests last night in Epping as well?
Yeah, it was a big protest last night in Epping. You know, it was actually very large. And,
yes.
And the thing is that most of the people are local. You know, you see them around the high streets, and the other people on the other side don't normally see them. They seem very organised, all the same banners. Someone's funding that part of it, which is actually...
You mean the counter-protest, the Antifa, the Stand Up to Racism, and all those kind of...
Absolutely, 100% being funded, and in order to do that. And trying to keep people quiet about what they want. And most of the people in Epping, what they want is these people have just been dumped there, right? So I'm not going to blame the people themselves. They've taken an opportunity, right? But they've literally been quietly put in there, dumped there, left there, nothing to do, nowhere to go. And like a bunch of youths in the summer holiday, you end up being a bit naughty. And they go in shops, they steal, they walk around following people, they're just sitting about. I mean, Epping, if anyone doesn't know, it's just a lovely, really quintessential British high street, really. It's very, very nice. And it's people look at this and think, you know, firstly, we don't know who these people are, not safe, right? No one tells anyone anything, so you're not even informed, right? Maybe if there was a strategy in place, you know, but there's not. People just come, they go, they walk around the shops, nick something. Everyone's got to be careful. And I do worry about my daughter. You know, she walks to the station every day, back at night or in the evening last night, and it's really dark around there. You know, and I look at this and think to myself, you know, the government is just putting two fingers up and saying, okay, look, we have a problem, we need to sort it, but this is what we're going to do to sort it. And I thought, well, why can't they? You know, like a friend of mine's got he's got farms all over the country, and I thought to myself, you know, they can't get pickers and packers. You know, maybe a condition is while they have to stay here, that not that they should be gotten rid of quicker. That okay, you're here, you're staying. You know, we're going to ship you in. We've got to deal with these people. You can ship in, you're going to work all day. You know, it gets them off the street while the processing's going on, and keeping them out of the way and out of trouble, because that's part of it as well. But we're being shut up about it. You know, people are not. We're not allowed. Like with a lot of things, it's like these group of people come along with. I'm not saying in this time, but it goes into the same situation with the Palestinian flags. The same type of people that turn up to things with flags relating to other things, and relating to the fact that people, you're Nazi because you don't want these people there. It's not the case of not wanting people there. It's the case of no one knows who these people are. Yeah. There's no, you can't, like you're saying just now, you call someone the police. You can't even get someone arrested for, like you said, for stealing a shirt, right? Yeah. So what's going to happen? Someone's going to end up getting stabbed, right, or killed, and then what's going to be said by the government? We all learn by it, which is their favourite.
Lessons will be learned.
Learn by this mistake, right?
Everything you're saying makes sense here, and you know this is so apparent. It's so straightforward, and what I see over and over again are many politicians from many parties, including Labour at the moment, who say we're going to solve it by something like what they call the one in, one out scheme. I've been told off already for even referring to it as that, because it's not. That's not what happens. There are far more people arriving than the very small number who would hypothetically be leaving as a result of this. And the fact is that you have loads of people who are very legitimately protesting, very legitimately saying, this is changing the character of our area. There's just too many people here who don't have any real role here, and all the things that are happening. I can understand that frustration, Ashley.
Yeah, I mean, it's look, it's an awful situation. How do you deal with it? And the reality is, if you want to stop something, you have to, unfortunately for people, people nowadays don't like it, you have to have a tough law system in place, which actually people understand. I mean, you look at countries, you know, I'm not saying I want to be like China or I want to be like the UAE, right? But do you know what? Over there, for instance, oh my God, if you went on a protest for a Palestinian protest, you would be arrested.
Do you know what a better example is? Actually, Singapore. Singapore is not a perfect place, but there are very harsh penalties for things like chewing gum. Chewing gum is banned from Singapore. Yeah. It's those little tiny things that actually do make a massive difference, but they're not getting the big stuff right either, Ashley.
We're not. And the thing is that without the stick, people will push, and that's what's happened with these protests, whether it's the Epping protest or the Palestinian protests, right? There's no stick, and everyone knows that. And these sort of people, and they're ultimately funded to do this, in my opinion. Some of them not, some of them for good reason. I appreciate that. However, they're funded for it, and there is no consequence. There is none, and they know this, and they will keep on doing it. And unless you crack down, human nature is you keep on pushing. Yeah. Right.
But I like you. Look, I may disagree with a lot of those people, but I want them to have the freedom to protest. I want there to be allowed to protest. I want free speech, and I want freedom of assembly, even for people I strongly disagree with.
I want to. My point is, I could totally agree with you. I just think that in my position, right, and be cars down. I'm Jewish. I live in an area that used to be very Jewish, is now not. is that we can't have opinions anymore, because if your opinion differs from theirs, you are a Nazi, and you just cannot say. I can turn around and say I agree with certain things with you. I want to see these things over a broad.
Well, you can't have a conversation with so many people who go far beyond, as you correctly say, go far beyond the bounds of peaceful protest and face no consequence for it, from holding up support for. It'll be really interesting to see what happens today for the people who are supporting Palestine Action as well, which is a proscribed terrorist group.
Yeah, I think that the fact that they are doing it, unless someone actually stands up to these people and they actually get dealt with properly. I mean, they're stupid, aren't they? Think about it. They're doing this. They simply could go there calling themselves something slightly different.
Well, this is my point. This is my point. I spoke to a lawyer yesterday, actually, who's on standby to defend all these people, saying it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's not conscientious objection. It's to do with civil disobedience. It's like, well, no, civil disobedience isn't violent. Civil disobedience isn't criminal damage. Civil disobedience isn't assault. There are people in Palestine Action who have done all sorts of things that are clear breaches of the law and are not just straightforwardly, defying the police or whatever. Not that I would condone that necessarily. But the point is that they're jumping on these Palestine Action people, which they should, but you can go out and you can say, I support the Palestinian cause and not support Palestine Action itself. You can also, there's also numerous documented occasions when people are holding up signs in favour of Hamas and Hezbollah, which are already prescribed terrorist organisations, and absolutely nothing happens, actually, and that annoys me.
What does it say about the people, though? And what does it say why the thought process? I mean, the thought process, look, I'm 53 years old, and I've never experienced what I've experienced at the moment. The complete swing, the thought process that Hamas, Hezbollah are good, Israel and UK, US bad, and it's just, it goes against everything that's happened over the last 50 years. I mean, a lot of these kids don't kind of realise as well what's happened with a lot of these people over those years.
Well, you're absolutely right, and they're willfully naive to that, to all of that. Ashley, we've got to move on, but listen, great call. Worries. You've made some superb points. Thank you to Ashley in London there. Really appreciate Ashley joining us in the programme. You can too, 0344 499 1000. Thank you to Ben in Belfast, who says, police community support officers are not plastic police. They're decent, community-minded people stepping up to try and help make their areas safer and to serve their fellow citizens. They often face violence and abuse. It is not an easy job. They were, of course, derided as plastic plods, but that Ben is absolutely right in terms of what he says about police community support officers. Should one of them have been sent, probably not their choice, it must be said, to a shopkeeper who simply said that shoplifters are scumbag? No, but that is a fair point, and I'm happy to take that, Ben. Thanks also to Mary in County Down, who says, well done, Robert Jenrick, standing up for shoplifters being targeted by shopkeepers, standing up for shopkeepers being targeted by shoplifters. A local garage has a self-service hot drinks machine near me. So many people are walking out without paying for their drinks that it's led the store owner to place electronic stickers on the bottom of the paper cups, which have to be scanned at the tills. The owner told me shoplifting is at epidemic proportions. This is a garage shop on the outskirts of a small rural town. Thank you also to John in Northern Ireland as well, who says, my son works in a large city centre store selling phones, laptops and all the other electronics. Every week, often twice a week or more, they're invaded by large, violent shoplifting gangs who are often wielding knives. They steam in, grab the high-value goods, run out. Security staff are told not to tackle them in case they're stabbed. They try to spot them coming and lock the doors, but it is often too late. His friend, who manages a well-known sportswear store in a city centre, has a similar tale. They keep minimal, higher-value goods on display, but staff are in a constant state of anxiety, waiting for the next store invasion. My goodness, imagine working in that shop. That would be not a very tough thing to do, certainly. This is just completely out of control. And thank you to Jason in the Lake District, who's been in touch to say Ashley had a great call. Totally agree with that. Let's hear one more voice note before the break. Matt has been in touch.
Peter, Matt in Hove here. Can you stop calling it one in, one out? It's just in. 1 minus 1 is 0, plus 1 is 1. It's just in. If you take your rubbish out and put it in the bin outside, and someone puts their rubbish in your bin inside, you don't sit in the kitchen and go, oh, I've taken the rubbish out. It's still there. It's just in. There's no out. It's just in. It's absurd.
Absolutely fair point, Matt. I will take that on the chin, as I will take that point from Ben as well about police community support officers. My friend Ross actually was a volunteer officer in the British Transport Police as well. He said it was a really, really tough thing to do. He did it for a couple of years, and good for him for volunteering in his community. Lots more to discuss. We'll talk to Will Geddes in a second about these protests, about Just Stop Oil as well. Guess what? They've resurfaced and they are taking part in some of these protests today. These people are often cut from the same cloth. Let me know your thoughts as well. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Now then, the front page of the Daily Mail says Eco Mob to join the Gaza protest. Today there's a lot of people protesting right across the country and here in London as well, in the capital. There is a march tomorrow which is in support of Jewish people. There are many marches against and protests, static protests against migrant hotels happening in various parts. There's also a number of people supporting Palestine Action. Now, that is a proscribed terrorist organisation. There are some legal issues about that. There are some attempts to overturn that, but democracy has meant in both the House of Commons and the House of Lords, they have voted to proscribe Palestine Action. It is a terrorist organisation. And now we hear that militant eco-activists have joined forces with supporters of Palestine Action, raising fears Britain could face months of protest chaos. This is Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion, Insulate Britain. They're all planning to support Palestine Action supporters during a fraught weekend of demonstrations. Police are gearing up to make mass arrests today. More than 500 people expected to descend on London in solidarity with the outlawed pro-Gaza group. Well, Will Geddes is a security expert. Will, tell us your thoughts, first of all, on the fact that these, just stopping oil, you wouldn't imagine would be anything to do with the Palestinian cause or anything to do with the banned terrorist organisation Palestine Action. Yet these people are coming together. They're just cut from the same cloth, aren't they? They're just anti-establishment people.
Yeah, pretty much, Peter. I think what we're dealing with here is just people who are disenchanted with everything. Goodness knows they probably shout at pigeons in their spare time. These are people that are just professional demonstrators who are out there protesting against whatever agenda. And I think these eco-climate idiots who are basically coming out to support Palestine Action, well, I hope they fall within the boundaries of the law, because the law and the Counter-Terrorism Sentencing Act, which was revised in 2021, makes it very, very clear that if you want to support a prescribed terrorist organisation, which Palestine Action is right now, then they could hopefully feel the full weight of the law on them. And especially under Section 12, which is support of a prescribed organisation, which can carry up to 14 years imprisonment, or Section 13, which is really public display of suggesting support. And that's carrying any banners, any insignia, anything that purports to support Palestine Action.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I put a point to a solicitor I spoke to, I think it was yesterday, who on Drive, who was talking about the fact that she's on standby to defend these people. The point I made to her was you can support the Palestinian cause, you can protest peacefully, you can carry a Palestinian flag, you could carry a placard saying Free Palestine or whatever you want. That's not illegal, but specifically supporting Palestine Action, the organisation, is illegal. So raising the question, why do it?
Well, exactly. But also bear in mind, Peter, they may feel that they are able to be able to carry out these demonstrations because that Section 13, which is displaying any kind of insignia, carrying a flag that says Palestine Action, for example, or shouting support of Palestine Action, only carries up to 6 months imprisonment or a fine, and that fine is indeterminable. Now, since Palestine Action were prescribed on July the 5th, so just over a month ago, there have been 221 arrests and only 10 people charged, Peter.
That's interesting. So that's very interesting.
The focus is right now on the police as to whether they can bring some dignity back and some morale back to the troops to actually go ahead by not only arresting them, charging them, and then being put into the judicial system and treated as they should be.
Coming from the security perspective that you do, you've dealt with lots of very, very difficult situations, Will, and far more difficult than the one I'm about to describe. If you have 500 otherwise peaceful protesters standing there with placards in support of Palestine Action, what would you advise the police to do?
Well, I think, kettling is obviously something they can't or shouldn't be doing, Peter, as we know. But I think one of the things that they should be considering is obviously segregating those protesters. Now, there are those that will simply just jump on the bandwagon. And we know that there are professional agitators as well, which will be in amongst those protesters, trying to stir up sentiment, trying to stir up their feelings. But I think if there are any opposing groups, the police are pretty good about trying to keep them separated. Talking about the legal aspect, I actually went along to one of the pro-Palestine or the Palestine Action protests just before they got prescribed, Peter. And the number of individuals wearing bibs saying legal advice, you'd be surprised.
Yeah,
so over and beyond that solicitor that you interviewed yesterday, you have a lot of people there on hand to try and provide support. But when I went, it was very quiet initially. It was fairly peaceful. People were simply waving their flags. But we know that certainly there are professional agitators who simply get in there, stir them up, and that's when it exploded and it became combustible.
Tell us your thoughts as well on the quite a number of protests about migrant hotels over the next couple of days. Most of those have been entirely peaceful. There were 15 arrests last Saturday. That is a small number in comparison to the number of people who took part, but nonetheless, they weren't entirely peaceful as a collective group. What is your thought on those protests, which are highly likely to continue not just this weekend, but into the future as well, Will?
Well, again, it's stretching police resources I mean, I'm not opposed to anybody protesting as long as they're doing it peacefully. But as we've seen with the Britannia Hotel down in Canary Wharf, not only was there an issue of them falsely imprisoning the individuals in there from actually leaving, and to a certain extent, I kind of understand why, because some of those were off doing Deliveroo type of driving sort of jobs, evidently. But what one's got to consider is the other people who actually work or live in the surrounding areas of where these migrant hotels might be. And bearing in mind, this is going to have a backwash onto those people as well. So anybody protesting, they've got to be very careful. And we only have to remind ourselves of Lucy Connolly. Be very careful what you put on social media right now.
Absolutely, Will. Thank you very much indeed. That's Will Geddes, the security expert. What do you think of all of this? Let me know. In regard to the police, Alan's been in touch with a voice note. This is what Alan has to say about his view of the police.
Morning, Peter. It's Alan from Salford. Talking about the police, how useless they are. On Thursday morning, they came to the lady across, or the couple that live across there, two sisters. They've been here 12 months. They've come to arrest the guy that was in the house before that, 12 months. And no one knew that he'd gone. 12 months, three of them, three police officers. I don't know how much time that spent, but it's ridiculous. They're inept, and I think I'd sack them all and start again. Thank you.
Alan, thanks for your thoughts on that. Just another window into, I suppose, some of the challenges the police have as well. But there are many police officers who act, and you just think, why? Why have you done this particular thing? The fact is, they're often told to do these certain things. I don't know about that particular aspect, that particular thing that Alan is talking about, but certainly when it comes to the calling round to the retro shop that Rob Davies was part of, that just seems a complete waste of time. Nobody has the right not to be offended. If you're going to incite violence, no, don't do that. If you're going to put things that are racist, sexist, whatever, online or in person, don't do that. That's not a good idea. But if you're simply going to say that shoplifters are scumbags, well, I mean, why should the police even be involved at all? The police need to be empowered, and maybe they're not, but they need to be empowered to simply say to the person who makes that kind of complaint, do you know what, catch yourself on, this is not a police matter, thank you very much, goodbye. That's what I would say to them. Anyway, lots more to discuss. We'll take more of your calls in just a second here on Talk.
They are absolutely shocking. They're not interested in representing the people that have elected them. They're letting everybody down on so many issues. Rushnara had spoken out against private renters being exploited and said that the government would empower people to challenge unreasonable rent increases. Yeah, they're now claiming that she hasn't broken any rules, any laws yet, but obviously we know what the government is trying to do on renters' reforms and so on and so forth. It just seems to me to be yet another example of do as I say, not do as I do. It's champagne socialism, champagne for me, socialism for everyone else. That seems to be what guides them. As I say, government of self-service.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's hear another voice note from Michael.
Hi Peter, Michael from Birmingham. There's some measures of deterrent which need to take place. Labour won't do it, but Reform need to announce it. 90% windfall tax on all hotels and private individuals who've let property to migrants. Let them moan about it, but they've taken enough out of the public purse. And 90% windfall tax to the security firms as well, and any other migrant enablers. If there's a law against it, just change the law. 2, all people granted refugees, and this should be backdated 25 years, they get a bill for all their board, keep, legal expenses. In the same way as we bill our students to study, let us bill them for looking after them all this time. And 3, security firms letting these people walk past them to work for Deliveroo, sack that security firm immediately, close the hotel. Just get rid of them.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. On migrants and hotels as well, John's been in touch from France. John, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good afternoon, Peter. I'd like to run something by you. If the British government leased 4 or 5 reasonable sized ferries off a company like GSR, if they put them ferries on the 12-mile line,
yeah,
and the border force, once they've taken them off the French government, then take that boat full of illegal immigrants to this waiting ferry. It will take about 5 or 6 or 7 these large inflatables to fill it, and as soon as it's filled, it sets sail for Gibraltar, where there's an RAF runway. It belongs to the British government. It does not belong to anyone else.
Correct.
So then all those people are de-shipped. They go nowhere near the town. They're just on the runway.
Yeah.
They get in the back of the relevant C-130, and they're deported. No human rights.
That is one solution. I just wonder whether it would work legally, and also, as many of these things are, is the political will actually there to do it?
Would it have to be done where the English Channel is wide enough, where they're not in French territorial waters, and they're not in UK?
I'm not an expert in international maritime law, John, but it's certainly one thought, and it's something I think they should consider.
So I think once they stop coming, which will be within days, they'll see it, right? Because the boats are very visible.
Well, the point I think. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Then those same ferries then start taking all the people that are in this country down to Gibraltar.
Yeah.
And we have a load of C-30s waiting for them. Off to Libya, off to...
I think a lot of people, John, would like that to happen. The question is whether the political will actually be there to make it happen. But it's one idea that absolutely should be thought about. The government, of course, talking about this one-in, one-out scheme. I know people don't like me calling it that, but that's what they call it. It is technically about 20 in, 1 out, as Robert Jennings correctly said. Andy had some thoughts on this as well in his voice note. This is what Andy has to say.
Hi, Peter. It's Andy from Bristol. Please ignore these people saying stop calling it 1 in, 1 out, and then describing a 1 in, 1 out situation. And also, please ask them to stop using rubbish references to describe asylum seekers. It's dehumanizing and it's not pleasant. But my main point, though, is that they are describing what is happening. 1 in, 1 out. Or maybe it should be the other way around, 1 out, 1 in. So, and they come in, we send them 1 out, and then we get 1 back. So we end up net zero. We end up with the same as we would have had anyway, but it's a deterrent, and that's the point. Anyway, great show. Thanks, Peter. Cheers. Bye.
Andy, thanks for your point there. There's a couple of points there. One, I'm not sure it is actually a deterrent, because if there are 19 other people who still get in anyway, are they actually deterred by that? There's a very small chance, really, of getting that. In terms of the rubbish reference, I don't think that person was dehumanising migrants necessarily. They're just giving the answer and talking about a sort of world, sort of day-to-day reference in that. I don't know what was inside that person's mind, but it didn't strike me as that was a dehumanising thing or a horrible thing necessarily. And people can say what they like. This is the home of free speech, and I don't think that was. I don't think that certainly there's no legal problem with that, and that's if there was, we wouldn't have broadcast it. But Andy, listen, thanks for your message. I appreciate it. It's good to hear from you, and do give me a ring or send in another message on a future occasion. David in Hertfordshire has a call as well. Give me a ring, 0344 499 1000. David, you have some thoughts on hotels?
Yeah, hi Peter. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
What triggered it off was the thing you mentioned about the Bournemouth hotels. I used to go to Bournemouth quite a lot, and bearing in mind that you've got these migrant hotels with the men wandering around, etc., etc., how many people like myself will now be dissuaded from going to Bournemouth for a holiday, even for a weekend break or something? The impact on the local economy is not measured, and that impact spreads to restaurants, to other hotels, boarding houses, other people in the area, and what is that economy suffering? Nobody quantifies that. We know
those are superb points,
etc., etc.
Yeah,
but multiply that up and down the country in Scarborough and other places. The cost to the overall economy must be hundreds of millions of pounds, but no one even mentions it.
And the problem is that there are loads of people who are attempting to run a business. They're attempting to get people in. They're relying on the tourist trade. You know, Bournemouth isn't exactly booming in the middle of January. They're waiting for those the fatter months. They've been through the lean months. They're waiting for the fatter months. The pen pushers in Whitehall don't care. They're saying, well, it's a hotel. These hotels have accepted the asylum seekers, the migrants. They will be filled. They will be there. Well, the rest of the economy can just, you know, get on with it. And the fact is they can't get on with it because they've been hammered by national insurance rises. They've been hammered by the living wage going up, which government does all the time, but it doesn't actually affect them very much. It certainly affects businesses. And the fact that loads of people will be put off this, as you correctly say, David, and it is that impact on the local economy that nobody is sitting there thinking, actually, we need to sort this out, are they?
No. As I say, it's a hidden cost. We know about the upfront costs of so much a day for housing, but there may be an even greater cost beyond that, including shoplifting, etc., that people have just not quantified.
That is a really good point. Staggering. That is a superb set of points, David. I think you've won call of the day, actually, because those are just really intelligent, interesting points, moving it on, moving the debate on, letting us think about things that we perhaps haven't thought about previously, and that's why I love taking calls. And if you want to get your voice on the air in the next half an hour, the number is 0344 499 1000. David, great call from you. Thank you. We're going to talk in a second about all the international implications of Gaza, what's happening, and indeed Ukraine, and what Trump is saying. Stay with us.
My message to people smugglers is this. I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Smash the gangs. Smash the people smuggling gangs.
People smuggling puns.
He couldn't even smash an avocado for a piece of toast.
Or the people... What would the people...
I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash... the smash...
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks when more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another two grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source. Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Keir Starmer's on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work. You
It's
just can't
crap.
say it.
It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world, as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Here for the next half an hour. There's plenty to discuss. We're going to talk about Ukraine and Gaza, many international moves, including overnight from Trump. We'll also talk about the astronaut Jim Lovell, the Apollo 13 commander. Remember that really nail-biting film with Tom Hanks that told the story of Apollo 13. Jim Lovell has died aged 97. We'll tell you that story if perhaps you've forgotten it or don't know it. Andy Lown, the space expert, will be with us as well. We'll take your calls and voice notes too. 0344 499 1000. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can also send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Just a reminder, I'm back tomorrow between 10 and 1, and then Wednesday, Thursday and Friday this week with Drive 2. So lots to discuss here on Talk. Stay with us. Yeah, Jeremy Kyle is back from his holiday on Monday and Tuesday, and after working a full 2 days, that's a whole 6 hours that he'll be working. He's off again, so I'll be here on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday with Talk Drive. I want to talk now about a couple of big international issues. One of them is Israel and what Benjamin Netanyahu wants to do and the reaction to that. But the big breaking news overnight was that Donald Trump says that on Friday in Alaska, he is going to meet President Putin of Russia. Let's just remind ourselves what Trump was saying last night about what could happen in regard to Ukraine, specifically something President Zelensky of Ukraine has already ruled out, which would be some ceding of Ukrainian territory to Russia. Let's see what Trump has been saying.
Looking at territory that's been fought over for 3.5 years with, a lot of Russians have died, a lot of Ukrainians have died. So we're looking at that, but we're actually looking to get some back and some swapping. It's complicated. It's actually nothing easy. It's very complicated, but we're going to get some back. We're going to get some switched. There'll be some swapping of territories to the betterment of both.
Well, that's really interesting from Donald Trump, because I'm not sure that can actually happen. Well, it can happen. Of course it can happen. It's possible. But whether it will happen and whether there's any political will, certainly from the Ukrainians, that happens, I'm very much in doubt, because Zelensky has already ruled it out. Let's speak to Colonel Simon Diggins, who is not only a former senior military officer in the UK Army, but also a defence analyst. Simon, how likely is it that Trump gets his wish in terms of what he was talking about in that clip there, do you think?
Peter, good afternoon to you. I think the short answer is he'll be able to agree a form of words with President Putin, which will satisfy him, but will not satisfy the Ukrainians, and then it will come to an end. But he'll then be able to turn around and blame the Ukrainians for not his view being realistic and flexible about them. In the past, he's talked about the Ukrainian losses from 2014, when Russia invaded Crimea and seized it, indeed, and part of Luhansk province, and said that basically the Ukrainians did nothing about that, which is untrue. They fought very hard, but nothing about that, therefore they're kind of written off. What President Putin wants is the whole of Luhansk and Donetsk provinces, which is what he's got. At the moment, he's got most of Luhansk, and he's got about 3/4 of Donetsk, but he hasn't got all of it, and particularly hasn't got the bit over the river, which is one of the major defensive lines that the Ukrainians have got. So the Ukrainians will be in no mood whatsoever to compromise with them. And indeed, President Zelensky, as I said, he's not prepared to deal. He also makes a point quite rightly that constitutionally he's not allowed as president to cede any territory. That would have to be a decision from the Ukrainian people. So I think we might head in towards a diplomatic sort of fireworks thing as far as President Putin and President Trump are concerned. But realistically on the ground, and realistic in terms of peace settlement, I fear nothing will really go forwards.
What do you make about the fact that Putin and Trump are actually meeting? It's the first time since the Ukraine war. I think it's the first time, well, certainly it's the first time since Trump has become president again, but it's been a long time since the two men have met, and they're meeting in Alaska. What do you make of that?
I mean, it's always important, I think, when those two leaders actually meet. And so you say it's the first time a US president has met President Putin since the Ukrainian war started in February 22. So it's not unimportant. And I would say in a normal run of things, it would be important they meet and to talk. I mean, President Putin, I think, has been persuaded by Steve Witkoff he needs to do something to support.
That's his sort of roving envoy who has does all sorts of things, not just in regard to Ukraine, but Israel, that we'll talk about in a second. Sorry, Simon, I interrupted you.
No, thank you. I think that, so he's been said to do something. And again, there was talk last week about some kind of air ceasefire in terms of missile and drone warfare, which the Ukrainians are receiving a huge number of incoming drone and missile attacks, up to 500 a night, but also inflicting a significant amount of damage on Russian infrastructure. So it's in both sides' interest, for different reasons, to bring that to a close. And that also might be an outcome from it, that there's an agreement, not necessarily on the territory, because I think over the next week we'll hear very clearly from the Ukrainians they're not prepared to concede. But maybe what President Trump and President Putin will come away with is an air ceasefire, which might start to create the conditions for some kind of extended ceasefire, with no recognition by the Ukrainians of the captures, or recognising in right that they've got the captures, but maybe just a kind of de facto recognition that they currently are unable to recover those territories. So we might get something like that out of it as well.
Okay.
That's my sense of it at the moment, anyway.
Sure. Steve Witkoff, of course, has a roving brief, as we were saying. Israel is another aspect of his bailiwick. We have heard from Netanyahu this week. Let's just play the clip again of the interview he did with Fox News. Quite a big, not entirely unexpected, but certainly a dramatic change of policy from him. Let's just hear what Netanyahu has been saying to Fox News.
We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas there, enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to pass it to civilian governance. That is not Hamas and not anyone advocating the destruction of Israel. That's what we want to do.
Even the head of the army in Israel has said that he's against this plan, never mind the international criticism of Netanyahu for doing so. Simon, what do you think? Is this the right plan?
I think it's a very dangerous plan. I think there are three problems they've got. The first is they're going into an urban area which is now very crowded, up to 1 million people in and around the Gaza city. A lot of it has been very heavily damaged. So in terms of the kind of military options of fighting in built-up areas, it's going to be very difficult for the Israelis to make any progress. Hamas, of course, will play straight into that. They'll put up a little bit of resistance to draw the Israelis in. The Israelis will then use air power and rockets and missiles to attack those Hamas individuals and kill yet more Gazan civilians, thus turning the onus of blame back onto them. They've also got a problem in terms of their military reservists. A number of the military reservists, including very senior generals, are saying this is not the right thing to do, and the head of the IDF saying this is not his plan, it doesn't help at all. And the third bit, which is completely incredible, is what you just heard from Netanyahu, talking about some kind of civilian government taking over. They've done everything possible to destroy what remains of any kind of Palestinian government. Palestinian Authority. So I see nothing in it which actually is credible in terms of a long-term solution. They will kill more Hamas people, they'll kill a lot more Palestinians, and they'll, I think, then be enabled to do what he really wants to do, which is take military control of Gaza. And there are people in his government who are talking about the expulsion of Palestinians from that area, and these are openly discussed within Israeli politics. They're condemned. They're always said that's not part of the game plan. But my sense is that he might move to something like that, even more dramatic from where he's heading at the moment.
And of course, the fate of the hostages as well. Hamas so cruelly treating them, starving those hostages. We've seen more footage in recent days of that, and saying that the hostages would be, as they put it, sacrificed if Gaza City was taken. Obviously, we want the return of the hostages as soon as possible, immediately, today. We also want the people of Gaza to live in peace. Are either of those things achievable under Netanyahu's plan, or indeed given what Hamas will do to resist it?
Well, I think that's the real danger. I mean, the only time there's been a substantive release of the hostages is when there's been some kind of negotiated settlement. Yeah. This is not a negotiated settlement. This is essentially use of force again, and the claim that he'll somehow be able to rescue him, I think, is, again, lacks any real kind of credibility. And I think people know that. It's really interesting reading the Israeli papers, and doesn't matter which one they're kind of left or right, they're all really clear. This is not going to bring the hostages home, and this is causing, rightly, the most immense anguish throughout Israel. I can't imagine anything worse. And what Hamas is doing is cruel beyond belief. and just wicked. I have absolute condemnation of what they're.
Of course.
Will this bring them home? I don't think so.
Yeah. As you have consistently at all times, Simon. As always, thank you for your analysis. That's Simon Diggins, Colonel Simon Diggins, giving us his analysis. Thank you to him. Adrian is in Surrey and has given me a ring about migration. 0344 499 1000. Adrian, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say this afternoon?
Peter, good afternoon to you. Yes, firstly, this situation, as we know, has gone on for many years, but the French, firstly, should ensure that people coming into the country have visas. Like, if I go to France, we're not a member of the EU, you
need to be stamped in or stamped out. You need to show your passport. I've been in France a couple of times over the past few months, and you get stamped in each time, yeah.
Exactly, but that's the first thing that should be controllable by the French in order to help, considering the £800 million we've given. Secondly, the boats are not legal boats to go into the sea by the Maritime Act. They've got engines of 40 horsepower. You are not allowed to go in unless you are a captain and the boat is of a suitable vessel. So there they don't do anything to stop it. The canals that run into the sea adjacent to roads could easily be either patrolled or a boom put across to stop these boats coming down. So that doesn't take very much to do. Once they arrive here, we've got 1,750 mosques, as I understand. Why don't they become centres for holding the illegal migrants?
Well, not all the migrants are Muslims.
I'm sorry?
Not all the migrants are Muslims.
No, I understand. So those that are Muslim, you deal accordingly, like we did with the Ukrainians. They go to families, or they go to places, or there's like shelter box. I've done humanitarian aid, and there's shelter box. These tents that hold a family of 8, and they have everything there. You have them in the grounds, or you accommodate them into, like the Salvation Army. They have for homeless people little.
Adrian, there's a lot of food for thought there, and there are so many different ideas coming into this station today about migration. Keep them coming. Thank you for your thoughts there, Adrian. We're just going to move on because we're running out of time, unfortunately, but there's an awful lot of people who have really good ideas. I just hope the government are listening, because the government's plan certainly is not one that is working so far. Maybe it will. Tony in Bournemouth's been in touch and says people have also lost their jobs in the migrant hotels. My friend was a porter in one of them. He was made redundant, no longer needed. Now the migrants are there, says Tony, which is just another negative impact of another negative thing of what is happening with those hotels. We'll talk more to you, and we'll also talk to the space expert Andy Lound about James Lovell, the Apollo 13 astronaut, who has died aged 97. We'll look back on his life in just a second and get more thoughts from you before the end of the show here on Talk. Stay with us.
They are absolutely shocking. They're not interested in representing the people that have elected them. They're letting everybody down on so many issues. Rushnara had spoken out against private renters being exploited and said that the government would empower people to challenge unreasonable rent increases. Yeah, they're now claiming that she hasn't broken any rules, any laws yet, but obviously we know what the government is trying to do on renters' reforms and so on and so forth. It just seems to me to be yet another example of do as I say, not do as I do. It's champagne socialism, champagne for me, socialism for everyone else. That seems to be what guides them. As I say, government of self-service.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who's been in touch. Let's play a couple more voice notes. One from Jeremy.
Hi, Peter. It's Jeremy in Newbury. In regard to these migrant hotels in Bournemouth, I've stayed there at the Roundhouse probably 20 times because I often go down to Bournemouth because even though London is closer to me to go to concerts, I don't like going to London because I find it too scary and intimidating. So I travel a bit further and I go to Bournemouth. I have been for the last 5 or 6 years. Staying at the Roundhouse, over 75% of the rooms there have got huge jacuzzis in. And I think putting migrants in there, you know, is just crazy. And it's going to stop people like me being able to go to concerts and things. It's just madness, especially 3 of them there. It's just going to rock the whole place that I love, which is Bournemouth. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeremy. I think a lot of people feel the same way. And your money that you were going to put into Bournemouth, and it's not just about the hotels, it's, you might have eaten out before the concert, you might have stayed overnight, gone out for breakfast the next morning, something like that. All of that money will disappear, as our caller made a very, very good point on that earlier. Let's hear a voice note from Ian. This is after the story about the shop in Rob Davies is the owner of it. I think it's in Wrexham, if I remember correctly. And this is, he called shoplifters scumbags. So this is what Ian has to say about that.
Hi Peter, great show as usual. It's Ian from East Grinstead. About the police and, you know, this thing about scumbags and all this, how can the police expect us to respect them if they don't respect the British individual or the population as a whole? You know, it works both ways, and the way they're behaving, I'm sorry to say, they deserve zero respect.
That's the problem. Respect is lacking in our society, but also respect is earned. One person I certainly respect is Jim Lovell, who was the commander of Apollo 13, remember the film? And of course the moon mission that went from potential tragedy to actually safely returning to Earth. Apparently he never actually said, Houston, we have a problem. The very famous line from the film, he said, Houston, we've had a problem, which is very disappointing. Up there with Play It Again, Sam, that of course is never said in Casablanca. Andy Lound is with us, the space expert. Andy, James Lovell has died at the age of 97. What an incredible career. It wasn't just Apollo 13, but that was the one he was known for best, wasn't it?
It was when he was known best. I mean, he had a fantastic career. It's interesting to think that when he was growing up as a boy, he was interested in flying and actually interested in rockets, which is quite amazing. And he always wanted to be either a pilot or a rocket engineer. Well, it was more easier to become a pilot. And in the 1950s, of course, he was in the US Navy as an aviator. And there was a great demonstration in 1954 of how this man behaved, because one of the jobs he had was flying an F-2H Banshee on an aircraft carrier, and had to land on a carrier at night with the lights of the carrier out because it was a full operation. And it was difficult to see inside the cockpit. The cockpit is illuminated for the dials. So he created a small light to illuminate a pad of information on. Unfortunately, he wasn't an electrical engineer, so he shorted out the lights on his aircraft. So it was completely dark, flying at night over the ocean to try and find an aircraft carrier in the dark. And incredibly enough, he stayed calm and noticed the algae that was being churned up by the propeller blades guided him to the aircraft carrier. Wow. And therefore he was able to land it. And it's that kind of coolness that got him really into the space program as the second tranche of astronauts.
And Apollo 13, of course, in 1970 changed the course of how space exploration happened, because there was just such a problem there. Just very briefly, in about 1 minute, tell us what went wrong with Apollo 13.
Yes, an oxygen tank exploded due to a fault that was put onto the spacecraft long time before, this cut the supply of oxygen to the hydrogen fuel cell system, which meant they had no electrical power or water. And therefore, they had to immediately move into the lunar module, a two-man spacecraft to keep 3 men alive. And it was the coolness both of himself as commander of that mission and the 2 astronauts who were on board, working with the great team of scientists and engineers down here on Earth, was able to save their lives by eventually rewriting the textbook on how to operate that spacecraft to recreate systems that would actually work, bring them round the moon and back to Earth again. And you could only do that by incredible teamwork, both remotely, because they were 250,000 miles away from the Earth, and the ground crews which were down on the ground. And it was being able to keep it together, not panicking. But as he actually said himself, he said there was no point in having an argument and bouncing off the walls of the spacecraft because you're still stuck where you are.
Well,
so
exactly.
Just deal with it.
It's hard to believe that film is nearly 30 years old now. Tom Hanks was in it. It's well worth a rewatch. Andy, thanks for your thoughts on that. That's the incredible career of James Lovell, who was Apollo 13's commander. I might actually go and watch that film again. It is great with Tom Hanks. It's just called Apollo 13 if you haven't seen it. Thanks to the top team behind the glass who've made the show today. Cal Duffy's been the producer. Sophie McDevitt's been the assistant producer, assisted herself by Kieran Galpin. The setup producer was Chris Jacobs. The tech up was, of course, Tech Up Dave. Video output was by Davis Fang and Luke Vincent. The video editor was Ayabel Fares and the weekend editor was Dean Spencer. I am back tomorrow at 10 o'clock with another packed show between 10 and 1 tomorrow. Hope you can join me for that. Lots to discuss. I'm also back on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday with Drive. Plenty to discuss there as well, and plenty of clips as well up online if you want to go to @talkTV on Twitter or follow me at Peter Cardwell. See you tomorrow.
My message to people smugglers is this. I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Smash the gangs. Smash the people smuggling gangs.
People schmiggling puns.
He couldn't even smash an avocado for a piece of toast.
Or the people... What would that... The people...
I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash... The smash...
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he